Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my standard review of the Samyang AF 75mm F1.8. This is for Sony FE, full frame mirrorless, though because it is compact and light, it's also a great fit on Sony E-mount APS-C, where it delivers a equivalent focal length of 112.5 millimeters, which is also very, very useful. I'm actually filming on a combination with the Sony A9 right now, so it gives you a sense of the video footage today, though on a very cool, dreary kind of day. Maybe that's the kind of day you love, I don't know. Anyway, you get a look at it today with this combination for filming. So if you want more details, all the information, breakdown of image quality in detail, you're seriously considering this lens, I'd recommend that you take a look at the definitive review. It's longer, but it will give you enough information to really make a well-informed decision as to whether or not you'd like to purchase it. However, if you're just kind of casually interested and you want an overview, you're at the right place. So first of all, as noted, this is an extremely lightweight lens. At 230 grams, a little over 7 ounces, it is truly lightweight, and in fact is half the weight of the Zeiss Batis 85mm f1.8 and a good 35%, 40% less than the Sony 85mm f1.8. So really, really lightweight. Its overall length is under 70 millimeters, about 2.79 inches, and so it is very compact. Has a nice small but common 58mm front filter thread, and so it is a really nice addition to what Samyang calls their tiny series. And so I have tested and reviewed in that series the 18mm f2.8, 45mm f1.8, and now this kind of an unconventional trinity of lenses, but a surprisingly useful one when you consider the fact all of these lenses are so compact and light that you can actually own all three of them, and they actually take up no more space and have a wider maximum aperture and cost no more than a zoom lens covering those focal lengths. And so it's a really unique addition to the Sony catalog with these lenses. And so as far as the feature set of the lens goes, as noted, besides being compact, it does come with a nice little carrying case, comes with a pedal-shaped lens hood that is reasonably deep, bayonets in place very nice and definitely. Overall, there is a metal mount, primarily plastics in the barrel. The big change up here for Samyang is that they have incorporated a custom switch on the side. Previously, there's been no switches of any kind. And so this is a really, really smart way to go for them, because by using the Samyang lens station, and I'll throw a link to that in the description down below, you can actually program different functions. It's a 2-position switch. And so that, like, for example, the way I've got it set up right now is in position 1, the ring becomes an aperture ring. And so a clickless aperture ring where you can quickly rock through the various aperture settings. You can use this even while shooting video, and so obviously it's useful for that. A little bit of a stepping action in terms of aperture kind of exposure, but it's actually relatively smooth. And so that's a nice addition. And then I've got it set up right now that in position 2, it automatically goes into manual focus mode, so that same ring becomes the manual focus ring. And there are some other options as you can set it up. That's to me the best way to have it set up. And I really love this because I always prefer to have a AF/MF switch, and kind of Samyang has made the best of that switch to where you're actually getting dual function out of it, which is great. And so I'm really glad to see them take this step forward, and I hope that this is a sign of things to come, just adding a little bit more complexity and versatility to their lenses and not charging us a lot to do it. Outside of that, however, everything handles as you would expect. Focus ring is relatively smooth, not an amazing damping or anything, but it works fine. It seems to be fairly linear in operation, and so, I mean, I have nothing that I'm dissatisfied about there. Now, talking about focus, let's talk about autofocus. This lens employs a linear focus motor that is very quiet, very fast in operation, and is very smooth, including for focus pulls like this. Overall, autofocus performance is very, very good. IEF works great. For portrait series, I think I had basically a perfect hit ratio, works well for pet IAF. My only criticism, and it's more pronounced on my A7R3 body than on the A9, but in AFC mode, just for general purpose shooting, I found that there tends to be just a little bit of jitteriness, as there's just a little tiny bit of pulsing sometimes as it settles on a subject. What's interesting for that is that while in the viewfinder it can be a little bit distracting, I actually have found the autofocus results to be excellent. So the only place where I would add that caveat to where I haven't seen that is that occasionally when shooting a static video shot like this, it will do a focus rack where it pulls out of focus for no discernible reason and can be a little bit destructive to your footage. And so I've seen this before with other Samyang lenses. I think it's a firmware update away from having very, very good autofocus performance, because all the other ingredients are there. It's fast, it's quiet, it does a great job with IAF. And so I think that, you know, that's the one tweak I like to see, particularly for video work, because it actually delivers really nice footage. As you can see, I'm shooting at f2 right now, and so it delivers great results. Now this lens optically is I think a really nice mix of sharpness and bokeh. It's actually for being inexpensive and so small, it's actually a really appealing portrait lens, delivering nice looking results. And so the profile is of the kind of the signature of the lens. You know, some lenses I reviewed, they're so amazingly corrected that it's huge contrast, and they're a little bit of suffering sometimes in the bokeh. The bokeh isn't as smooth as what it could be. This lens I think is a nice profile to where it is kind of like Samyang's 85mm f1.4. It is a very sharp lens, but isn't so overcorrected that it loses character. It has really nice bokeh rendering, and a lot like also like the 45mm f1.8. There is a great quality to the images that you get out of it that I think a lot of people will find very appealing. I think it arguably has nicer bokeh than what, say, the Sony 85mm f1.8 does. And so that's probably its biggest selling strength when it comes to comparing those two lenses optically. It's very sharp center of the frame at f1.8 and good sharpness to the corner. There is a little bit of loss of contrast and sharpness at the very edges of the frame, wide open. There's actually an amazing uptick at f2 of extra contrast. But the nice thing of being like that for f1.8 is a center focus that doesn't over contrast, makes it nice for portrait work. And so I actually find that skin is rendered nicely with the lens. And so stopping on down from starting at f2.8, it's amazingly sharp across the frame, and at landscape apertures, it's great detail, great acuity, rendering of fine details all across the frame. Your minimum focus distance is somewhere around 0.69 meters, I believe, and so there you get a kind of a slightly above average for an 85mm 0.13. The typical range is 0.11 to the very best being 0.14. So it's the high side of average for an 85mm lens. I've never tested another 75mm lens before, so it's hard to compare to anything else like that. And so it's about what I would expect for an 85mm lens. Useful, but not incredibly useful. Flare resistance is good, not exceptional. About what I expect for a lens like this. Depending on where the sun is placed, you'll get differing results, and so you kind of can watch for that. If the sun is right out of the frame, you can get a generalized loss of contrast. It's a look that's sometimes useful, and it's pretty easy to add contrast back in, like with the dehaze filter in an Adobe product or something similar. Chromatic aberrations are well controlled, no real issue there. Field use looked great. So all told, this is an appealing little package. Very, very compact, very good optical performance, and I think you'll find the 75mm focal length, kind of like 45mm. It can do most 50mm things, but that extra little bit of width is surprisingly useful for adding versatility. And I think the same is true of a 75mm. I'm actually enjoying the focal length. So certainly something to consider. The big question is, why would I buy this Samyang lens instead of the Sony 85mm? A lens that really probably has Sony's best price to performance ratio of their lineup on Sony full frame mirrorless. Of course, that's a question that you're going to have to answer yourself. And so here's what I would say as a comparison. As far as sharpness, the two lenses are very similar. Samyang maybe has a slight edge in bokeh quality, but you know, that's very, very subjective. It really will depend on what you prefer. The Sony has an advantage when it comes to autofocus confidence right now. Doesn't focus faster or even smoother, but it is more confident overall. And so if you're shooting action, I would still recommend that at the moment, or even video centric. I've had no focus issues with the lens for actual photography work, and so I have no reservations of recommending it on that front, the Samyang, but you know, that would be the primary reason to consider the Sony instead. Price is obviously a consideration. While both lenses are not expensive in the big scheme of photography, the Samyang at basically $400 US is 50% of the $600 price tag of the, or 50% cheaper than the $600 price tag of the Sony lens. And so, you know, that could be a factor. If you're on a limited budget, you're getting basically all the same performance for a cheaper price. And so that's a real consideration right there. The other thing is, if size and weight really matter to you, this lens is measurably smaller and more compact and lighter. And so, you know, that might be a big deal to you. Your mileage may vary, but I wanted to give you some information to help you to make an informed decision as to whether or not this lens works for you. I can say this though, I'm thrilled for Samyang to continue to develop lenses like this that really help to realize the dream for some people of wanting mirrorless to be a place where you can have a much more compact, lightweight package while delivering great optical performance. That's definitely the brief that is being accomplished here. So kudos to Samyang on accomplishing that. If you want more information, you can either watch the definitive review or you can check out my text review, which has lots of comparisons detailed there. And so check that out. There's also linkage in the description to take a look at the image gallery. Lots of photos there to consider. And beyond that, there are buying links if you'd like to purchase one for yourself, links to follow me on social media, become a patron, sign up for my newsletter. And of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.